Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. Welcome to episode number 257 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. Before I dive in and tell you about today's guest and our conversation, I have a time-sensitive invitation for those of you who are business owners or fancy yourself leaders or influencers. For the last couple of years, the number one request that I get from people behind the scenes is to help them out with their businesses. And I'll be super honest, I've stayed away from business coaching because, to be frank, there are so many douchey business coaches and I didn't want to be lumped in with them. As well, it felt like one of those just because I can doesn't mean I should type of things. However, the entire time I resisted, people consistently would ask me to help them out with their businesses. So last summer, when I was chatting with a close friend about her business and she interrupted to ask me if she can just hire me, I sat with it for a moment and decided to say yes. She ended up being the first of 6 business-related client immersions I've done since, and I have to tell you, I'm so glad I stopped evading this thing that was clearly coming for me one way or another. Now, I know not everyone has the time or the resources to come out to Los Angeles or fly me out and put me up wherever they live to do an in-person immersion, so I've created a 12-week summer immersion for those who want to level up their life, their message, their receptivity, their money, their confidence, their leadership, their offerings, their impact, and more. And this is really important. The thing that put me over the edge and made me decide to do this, in addition to the heart-exploding results my immersion clients have been getting, is that I'm beyond tired of seeing some of the most amazing, caring, talented human beings struggle in business while some of the crappiest people out there kill it. So who I really want to help this summer in this program is those who want to grow their businesses according to how they are built and what they're passionate about, while also not sacrificing or compromising their values and priorities. So in other words, no cookie cutters, gurus, or bullshit. I can't with all the same light-washed, whitewashed, surface-level nonsense. There's so much of it out there already. It's time to cut the crap, and we need more genuine people ready to fulfill their potential and make a real difference. So if that resonates for you, there's an application. You can go to bit.ly.com/summer-with summer-dialto. So that's bit.ly.com/summer-with-dialto. It's going to be really awesome. I've priced this extremely reasonably so that people at all levels of business can access it. So again, if you're interested in that, head on over to that application. Check that out. We are starting next Monday, June 11th, if you're listening in real time here in 2018. So make sure you fill out that application before June 8th if you're interested. Now, as for today's episode, we are getting into dating. We're talking about the dating paradox with Clarissa Silva. Clarissa has developed a technique. It's called your happiness hypothesis, which is based on her research and practice that provides evidence-based solutions to address some of the suboptimal relationship challenges that are occurring in today's tech-driven dating world. Her truth was that relationships have become much more complicated these days. Here's what we covered. The dating paradox, how there's so much more choice with online dating, swiping, and stopping on shiny objects these days. She walked me through some of the modern dating terms of which I was completely unaware and totally entertained by. We talked about how technology intersects with self-esteem and relationship satisfaction, and how people create double consciousness. This was fascinating. We got into vanity validation, device dependency, and what people want versus what people need, why she doesn't believe in self-love, and why she believes we should create our own equations and algorithms to deconstruct the infamous ideal partner list that so many people have. So if you're someone who's out in the world dating, this will be really useful for you. And if you're just curious what it's like out there right now, it is wild. You will learn a ton in this episode. Enjoy and share. The show notes can be found at untameyourself.com/TT-257. That's untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -257. Let's get into it. Everyone, I am pumped to have Clarissa Silva with us today. Clarissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a true pleasure and honor. Thank you.
We are really going to dig into some relationship and dating stuff that will definitely be fun, entertaining, and informative. But first, I want to ask you our opening question that everyone gets, which is, what is a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
You know, I thought about this because there's so many areas that I think are occurring that are just, that we didn't really expect. But the thing that drives me is that relationships have become much more complicated. Yeah. And it's ironic, right? It's ironic because we're living in a world that's so highly technologically evolved and so connected, yet we're so disconnected on relationships.
This is amazing because I've been saying this, I've been calling it like the illusion of connectivity, right? We appear to be more connected than ever because all of the digital means, but because it's happening primarily in a digital context, our like biological human nature is the most disconnected it's probably ever been.
Absolutely. I call it the dating paradox because it's giving off just what you said. It's giving off the illusion of social capital, popularity, choice. It seems like you have so much choice with online dating, and really when you hear the stories and when you see people's real satisfaction with their relationships, there's not really that many viable options is the problem.
Right.
You know?
It's so weird. So I was telling Clarissa offline before we started recording, and some of you know this because I've mentioned it already if you listen to the show regularly, I had taken about a 1.5 year break from men altogether. I didn't date. I wasn't hooking up with anyone. Like, I was just coming home to myself after a really intense relationship, just focusing on my own healing and just taking a breather after like 10 years in back-to-back relationships. And I started dating, and I'm like, all right. At first, I was like, I'm not going to do this online nonsense. I was judging it. And I was like, all right, let me not be, I'm all about non-judgment. So I'm like, let me take my own medicine. And I joined a couple of apps. I joined the League. I tried Bumble for a week. And what I noticed almost instantly with Bumble was becoming desensitized to humans so fast. you could just swipe through. There's always more where that came from, which I don't know if that's how it works for everyone. That was my experience. Like there were just always more people in green circles at the top. I still don't really even know what that meant. It's so weird.
Well, I say this often, and I really see we're treating people like we do our social media streams.
Yeah.
We swipe and we stop at the shiniest object, and then we just continuously move on. So we're treating people like we do our streams. So you're absolutely right. That's not uncommon. It becomes easy to ghost, bench, breadcrumb, all these trends that are occurring because
I don't even know what most of these words. I know what ghost means. What is bench?
Oh, it's a similar thing. You're kind of in the lurch while the other person is dating. That person has you on a bench while you're warming it. That other person's going out and seeking somebody else.
And what is breadcrumb? I heard that in an episode of Will and Grace. Like a 15-year-old girl was telling Will someone was breadcrumbing him, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah, so what they're doing is like they're using the most minimal amount of communication to communicate with someone that they have interest in. So they're reaching out through text messages every 3 weeks, then it goes to 3 months, but the other person considers this dating still. They accept the most minimal contact. Like if you like one of their photos on their social platforms, they think it's game on again. They think they're still dating because the person's expressing some kind of interest.
Oh, interesting. So how do people, this might be a big question, but how do people navigate this? Because and probably my experience, and I'm sure for some people who watch or listen to the show, we do a good amount of personal development work. We have a good amount of self-awareness. I'm able to be objective and kind of zoom out and watch myself. And I did when I went all in, I did this 1 week on Bumble and I went all in and I'm like, I'm going to check this every day and I'm going to be super responsive. And it was exhausting. And what came out of it were a couple of good dates, but 18 text message friends. And I was like, who the hell has the time for that?
Yeah, no. One of the things that I've created is a whole new brand. It's called Your Happiness Hypothesis, and it's a part method that I use in practice, and it's also a study that I started examining all of how technology is intersecting with self-esteem, relationship satisfaction, and I really tried to carve out how could we prevent some of this suboptimalness of relationships to occur. So Your Happiness Hypothesis started as a concept that I wanted women to start treating dating like it's a social experiment, right? Because I wanted them to start looking at dating as though they were collecting data on what they really, really wanted in a life partner.
Yeah.
I really wanted them to just isolate on characteristics, not just Photoshop skills or pen pal skills. I really wanted them to focus on what they would really, really feel was ideal for them. So I always say treat dating like it's a social experiment. You collect data on these dates. Don't pressure yourself with whoever shows up in that slot. Evaluate them throughout the span of what you want in your life, not just because he swiped with you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I went into dating. That was exactly what I said. I'm like, I'm going to treat this like a social experiment and I'm going to gather data. And I was excited because dating is something that, women in my programs have asked me about. And I'm like, I honestly have no idea. I've never dated before. I've been in 5 serious relationships since my 20s, but I always just met my next partner, through a friend or at an event or something. So, now that I've been doing this for 2 months, I've gone on more first dates in the last 2 months than I had on the previous entirety of my life. And I'm 34 years old. So I want to know more. And I love that, you're a scientist, you're a researcher. I know your site said scientist, strategist, solutions. And I was like, oh my God, she's speaking all of the language that I love. So But being a behavioral scientist and being a researcher, I think that gives you a unique aspect. I've been wondering about this. What have you found in terms of how the social media and this digital stuff is actually impacting? It's a mind's F, if you will.
Yes, yes, yes. That is the best way to describe what's going on. So I conducted a study called the Your Happiness Hypothesis. I started looking at what were areas that really needed the most improvement. And the first area I targeted was women's self-esteem.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I explored every single possibility and now the sample is from 28 to 73. There we have, so that's millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Y, we crossed the whole gamut. And then I even tested the same questionnaire I used in Europe to see what was happening over there. If we could so what we found was not just that it was intergenerational, we also found a global pattern that is occurring. So when we asked, okay, what impact is social media having on your everyday life experiences? The 50% of the millennials said they felt negative self-esteem and they felt more FOMO when comparing themselves to other people on their streams.
So time out for a second. In case anyone listening doesn't know what FOMO is, it's an acronym for fear of missing out.
Right. So then I started examining this, and then I came up with another concept that I call vanity validation. What I found was people were constantly seeking validation through electronic likes or swipes instead of life. So they were living for likes.
Yeah.
Right? How did device dependency, is now shaping the way that people interact, right? So for some, interaction only digitally is a relationship, right? We found that there was higher validation that occurs not just from self, but relationship. That attested to this is how we measure our health. You're on my Facebook status. We're in photos together. Oh, if I'm not, then you're doing something. It just becomes a spiral of things that just make relationships a lot harder because you're not living and doing relationships in real life.
Yeah.
You're doing them over a device. And that's become normative,
Yeah.
So vanity validation, Elizabeth, that's what's happening.
So this is funny. As you're saying that, I'm recalling two relationships ago, I was in my late 20s, and I remember getting to this tension point where I wanted to post pictures and he wasn't really trying to post pictures and the meaning that I created around that, right? Whereas now, my last relationship, we were very public and I learned I don't ever want to do that again because then when we broke up, we felt like we needed to make an announcement about it and we did. Right. And thousands of people liked it. So many, 200 people shared it and because it was an example of conscious uncoupling, which I'm putting in air quotes.
Right.
And then a couple months later, I deleted it because I was okay, that was ridiculous. Yeah. But it's really interesting to navigate. Now I'm in a place of, I was actually thinking about this. I've been seeing someone I really like. And I'm at what point do I need to say to this person, let him know about my no social media rule? I've swung the pendulum in the other direction because to me that feels like a healthy choice. So that I can't even distract myself. It eliminates that as even a potential conflict. I don't need to worry about it. I don't want to see you on my Facebook page. I want to see you on my phone and in my house,
Right. Yes. See, that is the best line I've heard. I don't want to see you on social. I want you to see you on my house and on my screen. That's it. Yeah. I think it's hard to institute though, Elizabeth. I'll tell you that. I think most of us want to live life in reality and really express the joy that we do see, right? we're watching everybody's highlight reels on Facebook, right? And of course it's all positive, right? And like you said, all right, let's flip it. How do you deal with the negative? Oh, so now you're all applauding that I broke up and I'm kind of unhappy? Like, you want to validate that? Like, so I think it's a harder stance to take, but I think it's much more effective at the end. Make grand announcements. I'm officially dating. I'm getting married. I'm engaged. Major announcements where people could celebrate that. But, okay, this is us at the museum. This is us at the zoo. People really don't care. And it creates more envy, and it creates more like social comparison. We're applauding that people eat. We're applauding that people go out. We applaud they go on vacation.
And and I remember too in my last relationship, and not even just in my relationship, but like I basically have stopped using Facebook in any sense of like keeping up with people I know. I rarely scroll through the news feed. I'm not usually commenting and looking at people's stuff. I'll post occasionally, but because I remember my last relationship, sometimes my partner would post things and I'd be like, were you posting that because you care about me, or were you posting that because you wanted everyone to think that you were an amazing boyfriend?
Right.
And I remember thinking that about other people too, who I would see behind the scenes and how they were really treating their partner, and when no one is looking.
Absolutely, because we want to project that positive highlight reel. Yeah. We want to project that everything looks great. I mean, if everything was, we wouldn't have the rates of social isolation, the rates of depression that we're getting. We wouldn't be seeing any of these harder outcomes that are occurring because you want to compete with the profile above you, the profile below you, and everything else around you. But, what about in real life? Celebrate that you get an award, that you got a promotion, that you got a job. So, focus on driving through real life instead of the isolation of a screen and you.
And I think the distinction, and I'd be curious how you might loosely define this unless you have a ready definition. How would you define real life? And I'll share a quick story. I was talking to a girlfriend the other day. She's been dating for a little while too. And she has an online presence, thousands and thousands of social media followers. And she was telling me how she was seeing this guy, and they slept together, and afterwards he was like, I can't believe this. And she was like, what? And he's like, well, and he said her screen name. It was almost like he wasn't even connecting with her. He was connecting with the persona, the image of her, the online faux celebrity, Which, that feels like a slippery slope as well.
Well, yeah, right. So part of my vanity validation concept is just that. It's the persona that they portray sometimes is creating a double consciousness, right? And that double consciousness is what you want to appear. Maybe it's your ideal self that you're portraying, right? But the difference now is that we're all brands. Before, we were all people trying to accomplish. Now, we're all brands. You're all micro-influencers if you have 20,000 plus or whatever number that golden number is. You become this persona that people idolize. And it happens to all of us. It happens to you. It happens to me, where people think, oh, you're on television. Oh, you're in this. Whoa, I can't even approach you. It's or when they realize you've always been who you are, right? I've always been this scientist that's concerned about human beings and impact, right? Never was I thinking, oh, I am some pseudo celebrity in my mind into the 5 fans. No, it's harder to really create something that maintains integrity to who you are. But you can't really isolate out idolization. We're the new rock stars, we're the new football stars, we're the new athletes, we're the new, everyday common people now have the ability to be a top influencer, somebody's somebody's pedestal, somebody's idol, you know?
Yeah.
But real life is still about accomplishment. Real life is still about what when you rip away that veil that you put out there, because nobody's going to say, you know, today I feel like my life is doomed. They're not going to write that. They'll feel it, right? So the more integrity you have to what you do in life and how you approach and you measure your own worth and accomplish that and really have that measure towards worth, that's real life.
Yeah. Vanity
metrics, they will fade. There's a cycle to vanity metrics all the time. Algorithms change. Like, you're going to be in a constant competition with your own fake brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, even for people, like a lot of the people who come on the show, people have brands and stuff. And I have a lot of friends who are more, I know it's a super buzzword, but authentic, who actually do share when they're having a crappy day, or they do share, you know, when something isn't going their way. They use it to teach, right? They're usually not sharing it when they're right up in it. Although I've seen that too, where people are like posting videos of them crying. And, you know, I have my own opinions on stuff like that. But I also, that's another thing I wonder. So I was talking to someone and he was like, oh, should we become Facebook friends? So we could, he literally said, like, so we could creep a little more before we meet. And I was like, I guess. But, and you know what? I ended up being glad I did, because I was making judgments that weren't positive based on that this was a very attractive person. In fact, like, I almost didn't, and this goes to like the mind F, right? I almost didn't swipe on this person because he was so attractive. I was like, he's probably an asshole. But there was something like that just kept like compelling me back to his picture, and I'm like, let me just go for it. And but when I did look on his Facebook, he was actually writing about stuff that I really care about. He was talking about social justice. He was talking about Black Lives Matter. And I was like, what the hell? And like, I wouldn't have known that. I would have stayed in my judgment and not become more open to that person had I not seen that there was like value alignment and like intellectual stimulation possible as well. So it's like a double-edged sword, because I think you can like die on that thing, or it could like open up possibilities for you.
Yeah, no, you know, there's so much data available to people now about everyone. And I think it is nice to supplement some of what you see that's, you know, filtered and photoshopped to, you know, I like to see, you know, let's admit it. We all stalk before we go on a date with somebody. We all, like, I want to look at your LinkedIn. I want to look at your, whatever I could see on your Facebook. I want to see, you know, what you're really about, because you sitting with a tiger, it's not going to help me get to know what you're about.
I'm laughing because you see that, right? Like, if anyone who's listening to this is single, which I imagine people who are not single might have tuned it out just because they're not interested, or maybe they're still listening because they're like, this shit is crazy. But that is like such a common thing where someone selects like their best vacation photo. Like, me too, by the way. I have a picture of me ziplining in Costa Rica because I want people to know that I'm a little adventurous.
Yeah. See, but that conveys your personality.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like, it doesn't, you know, when men do it, they're trying to compete with the guy above him, on the side of him, below him. So you know, he gets selected. But, you know, the truth is that one of the hardest things about relationships is that people really don't know what they want versus what they need.
Yeah.
So, you know, with online dating, I would say that 70% of the time you're almost bypassing real quality people that would have impact in your lives, because you're just filtering through a photo story, a photo assembly.
Yeah.
You know.
So I have a really great guy friend. He's a bit older than me, and I was asking him like if he uses the dating apps, because once I started using them, I was very curious about the male experience. Because I feel like for women, it's especially on something like Bumble, where like it's designed so that the woman goes first. Which I'd be curious about. I'm going to bookmark this. I'll come back to the Bumble thing. But I asked my friend if he uses them, and he said, no, apps don't really work for me because I'm not a traditionally attractive person. You really have to like sit down with me and get to know me. And so he recognized that he's probably not going to get swiped on, like what you were just saying. But he is a great dude, and he's right. Like, this is a friend of mine. I'm attracted to him because he is a great dude. Like, I wouldn't want to date him, but like, he has such an attractive personality. He's so great and kind and generous and so fun. And you can't really tell that from the picture.
Right. But, I think that's one of the biggest gender differences, right? Because men approach online dating very differently. And good thing your friend doesn't go at it this way. I joke around, I think like men from the day they started finding things attractive and tested out their methods, they kept like a stats card in their mind, how they do with sports. Like, I swear that they were like struck out with that, I'm going to try a different method. And then, and then they keep like a stats record in their head of, okay, this method works 80% of the time. This method works on this type of woman 90% of the time. I swear that they approach online dating the same way. They really use math to their advantage. They're like, decent, not crazy, in hopes that they get 1% return on that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think women select a lot deeper than just visual, right?
Yeah.
But we're using a superficial cut on that first impression. So I think your friend, just for S&G, should try online dating and do the same approach that men do. They just swipe to...
What is S&G?
Oh, shits and giggles.
Okay. I didn't think of that. Quick break in the show to let you know about something else that I have been incubating on for months and finally released into the world. Some of you who've been listening for a while might remember our big survey that we did last September. I have spent months feeling into how I can serve you all in a way that's best aligned for everyone. And from what you all shared in those surveys, that means striking a balance of valuable, actionable, consistently inspiring and affordable content, tools, and practices. And for me, what that means is sustainably, without overgiving, as I am ought to do, in a way that is fun and allows me to be my fullest self and connect with you in community. Over the years, it's been a struggle for me to exist within the coaching and online marketing industries when deep in my heart, I want to just be best friends with all of you. Play with you in real life and online, chat about all the things from the hard and intense to the woo-woo and wonderful. And between all kinds of changes from algorithms, systems, and services to personal things in my life, within my team, and more, it got really hard to keep everything going in 2017. And as some of you know, I had to close down, shut down, and stop doing a couple of things that many of you had really gotten used to and were really enjoying. Running a service-based business, especially when you're a wildly creative person who actually gives a shit about the humans on the other end of the screens, is no jokes. So, a while back, I learned about this platform called Patreon, and at first I didn't really get it, but then by a stroke of grace, I was gifted Amanda Palmer's book, The Art of Asking, and realized that there is a way to play, share, meet you where you are, and give you what you want without overextending myself while doing it. So here we are. There are a variety of rewards you can claim on our Patreon, depending on how deep you want to go and how much time you want to spend with me and the Wild Soul community. Some cool things that this platform and way of playing together will allow me to do are keep this show ad-free. You don't have to worry about any miscellaneous random sponsors or anything like that are unrelated to what we talk about here. It's also allowing me to bring back Sunday sermons and other extra episodes the community really loves, give you access to regular bi-monthly Wild Soul Movement sessions without having to join a whole program. I can host an online community forum where you can all connect and discuss the content, current events, what's going on in your lives, and even plan local meetups if you want to. I'll be doing a monthly Ask Me Anything Q&A, as well as deeper dive workshops every other month. So you can scroll through those rewards, decide which level you want to engage at, and the link to do that is patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. So that's Patreon, patreon.com/Elizabeth Untamed. So head on over there, check it all out, see what level you want to engage with. I'm super, super excited about this. Appreciate you all so much. especially your patience, as I have been figuring out, what works and what is sustainable. So, all right, that was a little bit long of a break. Now back to the show. So this question that you said between what people want and what people need, this is something I'm also noticing as, I'm 34 now. The last 2 times I was single, I was just turning 30. And before that, I was 27, 28. And I notice now, after those deeper experience and longer relationships, that there's so many things that I used to think really mattered to me. But they were qualities. They were like a checklist versus what I could potentially create with a person in a relationship. That I realized, because like my last partner, I wrote him down on a sheet of paper and I got everything I wanted except for one thing. And the qualities did not add up to be someone that I built a healthy relationship with. So I was like, I'm never doing that shit again. So in your experience, how can people go into dating? I mean, you already said social experiment, but I'd love to know anything else that you could say on what people want versus what they need. How can people figure that out?
Okay, so this is what I suggest in my practice. I want people to create their own algorithm, right? Just like the websites, just like the apps do. I want people to create an equation that deconstructs the list that you just said. Most of us have a list of what we'd like and what we absolutely think we need, right? This is what you do with that list. On each date you go on, you take that same list that you said, this is what I absolutely need, this is what I absolutely want, and I want people to check off the amount of compatibility on their own characteristics that they said and see how much of that person yielded what you said you wanted versus what you needed. Smart. So the whole experiment, I make people do this for the course of a week with each of their dates. And at the end, we wrap it, like, we look at the inconsistency because there's always incongruence. And although people will have a minimum of 7 things that they say they're going in with, either in real life or online dating, do you know what they actually use to determine? They remove all of those 7 things and whittle it down to 2, right? That's 2 things off of the list of what they want. So the other exercise that I ask people to do is I want them to look at their list. Yes, you got characteristics, you got personality, you got everything there. But now I want you to strip it all down and just look at what your life desire is. What does your life look like 5 years from now? What's in it? And is that person going to yield what you wanted in that time? So I really want people to look at what their life desire is based on how they see their future. Because I think we fail to really examine future while we go through relationships because it feels really, really good in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you want, you just want to experience that euphoric phase of love. And that's where you can't move beyond that phase. But I ask people, project beyond the euphoria, because in real love, euphoria doesn't occur till years later down the line.
Yeah. This is great. So I feel like there's a distinction I want to ask you to make here, because seeing how this person could fit in and like co-create your own vision for your future feels like a healthy thing. But the future tripping, where you're just like projecting out your marriage and what your children are going to look like when you actually aren't. So I guess what I'm kind of hearing, and I want to make sure that this is correct, is you are looking for proof to actually validate that this person could be there, rather than the future tripping, which is just imagining it without any proof.
Right. Well, I don't want people to over-idealize or romanticize. Like, I don't want them to think about, okay, we're running down the aisle tomorrow. That's romanticizing something, right?
Yeah.
I want them to think about what their life desires were. Before you met him, did you plan on traveling the world? before you met him, were you happy with just vacationing on the Jersey Shore? Like, whatever you wanted to accomplish in your own life, is that part of what you saw, you sharing, you co-creating? That shared experience is what I really want them to focus on. Because a wedding date and all the glamour of a wedding is short-lived. It's that day, that's it. And then daily life is what's the challenge of a marriage, right? Like, that's it's establishing equity every day. It's establishing like so many different elements that you don't think of when you're in that euphoric lust phase of a relationship.
Yeah. So
I want not to focus on, okay, I'm going to have 2.4 kids. I'm going to have this kind of car. No, those things are going to occur, you know, if that's part of what you want to co-create. But when you really ask people about what's the number one thing about relationship satisfaction, it's not about, we got that Lexus we wanted. You know, it's not that. I had a partner in life. I buried my parents. They were next to me. We had our 3 kids. We got them through teenage years, year 2 of their lives. We didn't kill them. Like, those kinds of things are what you really like, you know, real relationship satisfaction. That's where you measure it.
Yeah, I like this term that you keep using, relationship satisfaction. After my last relationship, I realized that the core handful of things that really mattered to me were someone that was going to be unconditionally supportive. Not, like, unconditionally supportive. Like, I have no, like, it would be the biggest red flag for me. The minute someone wants to criticize anything about me, my body, my goals, my dreams, my ideas, I don't care if you question it. I don't care if you challenge me. I've actually had someone recently, like, call me out on something and challenge me, but he did it in, like, a loving, careful, considerate way, without making me wrong. He was just like, I've been noticing, and he was right. And I was like, damn, like, that was actually, like, hot. I was more interested after that. He communicated it so well, and there was not even a subtle hint of put down or trying to control me or change me or anything. And I was like, damn, who's this person? Right?
Right. I love it.
So, like, the unconditionally supportive, nourishing, fun, and expansive. That was it. That was like, these are my non-negotiables. Like, fun. It has to be so fun. You know, being a growth-oriented person, I realized last time I bypassed so many red flags because I was like, what? We're growing. It's supposed to be like this. It was not.
Yeah.
Shit was not okay.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. And it's interesting because when you look at what people say they want and then what they actually marry sometimes is the opposite of what they've said, and their patterns always were the same. So they were almost never dating their husband or wife. They were dating the opposite of their husband and wife. Like, and then they come to me and they're like, what am I doing wrong? You know, I'm like, you're not dating what you said you wanted. You're dating the exact opposite of what you said. And it happens for both men and women.
I met someone recently who was describing, she had come out of a really abusive marriage that was totally like nothing what she thought this was the ideal guy. It ended really badly. And then now the person she's with is super safe. But I could tell by the way she was describing it that she made a dozen concessions to be with someone that she felt safe with.
I know, you know, Elizabeth, this always makes me sad. Like when we really look at like what happens with how women go about relationships and how their self-esteem is constantly taking a toll, right? So this is what happens with women. They'll begin dropping their standards. They begin lowering their expectations just for the very basics. Like, you know, if you were in a domestic violence situation, you know what your next top pick in a guy is? That he doesn't hit me. That becomes the overarching thing. That becomes the only thing that she doesn't want to experience anymore. The rest of it, she could care less about, because the one that abused her probably had like 5 of the qualities that she could have sworn she would have wanted. So then it's normal. Normal human behavior is to fight or flight. You will run away from what hurt you. And that past hurt is going to guide your future relationships because you're trying to avoid that similar hurt again. And, in many cases, it's a good approach because they're not going to get hurt. And that's, and that's ultimately a much more optimal relationship for them. Did they sacrifice a few things that they probably thought they wanted? In the long term, we make choice and we have to just analyze how better all of that serves us in our lives,
Yeah. So. That's interesting. I don't know how I feel about a handful of things that you just said, but I don't debate people on my show. I think everyone's opinion is everyone's opinion. So what I'm curious about is,
Please tell me.
I tend to be idealistic though, so I don't need to put my idealism into that. I just don't think people should settle or whatever. We talk about trauma a lot on the show too. So I know like for some people, they'll actually continue to attract the same thing so they can have the ultimate healing and come out on the other side of it. So, but it's all also so subjective, even to talk about dating and we're also primarily having a heteronormative conversation. Does your work, are you primarily studying like heterosexual relationships, or have you looked into homosexual or trans or queer relationships as well?
I spent my entire career in infectious disease. I worked in HIV/AIDS, so I've worked in every single different orientation.
Cool.
And my work serves whoever needs it. Yeah. And I agree with you. I don't think that settling should ever be an option, right? So, a lot of my work is around building self-esteem so that they can be with their real ideal type. But, I also have to be sensitive to people who do reduce their expectations because they're trying to avoid that past hurt.
Yeah.
So I have to just recognize that there's many, many facets, but none of us should settle. No. I never advocate for settling, but I understand pain is a large decision-making factor for many.
Yeah. And I was talking to someone about this recently too, how I think when you reach a certain point after you've been in several relationships, probably later in your 30s or 40s or wherever you are, that you just want someone that makes sense. And you just want, some people, not everyone, right? Because some people don't want a life partner, but some people just they do. You just want like that companion or that partner or like someone reliable. And you kind of realize maybe I don't need to cling. So maybe it's not settling. It might just be taking a more practical and a less ideal approach. Who knows?
Right. Oh, definitely things evolve over decades. I mean, change happens at a period of 7 to 11 years. So definitely, we're going to evolve it with each decade. So what might make sense when you're 20 will not make sense at 40, and the other thing that changes along with time is your tolerance.
Yes.
You're just not going to tolerate a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
You're not going to tolerate a lot of bullshit. So those things do help shape who your ideal type is for real.
Yeah, that is an amazing, amazing point about the tolerance. Like, I'm out. Like, there's so many things for me that I'm like, nope, gotta, that's the, I also realized for me, I'm not necessarily built for online dating because I'm a kind person and I have a conscience and just deleting people because I don't like something they said, I feel like I need to wrap it up or something. I'm an ENFJ, harmonious relationships really matter to me. So yeah. I'm but after a while I was just I don't have time, delete, block, I'm out. I started doing it. I became a little ruthless. You have to be a little ruthless.
You have to be because it's seriously, when we think about how much algorithms impact our lives, I mean, it's traffic lights, it's hospital rooms, it's your dating, your sexual selection. It's so using a mathematical approach to another thing, I think is ideal.
And to go back to the thing you said earlier, I actually remember my friend Pat, this is like 10 years ago, saying it was just a different context. It wasn't about like swiping because online dating wasn't a thing yet. He was like, oh, you just hit on as many women as possible, knowing that eventually someone will say yes. And I'm like,
they still do it.
I don't want to speak for women in general, but like that would never be my approach. I'm like, no. I can't.
Well, because we don't run with this like little sports stats card. And remember, if we ever did online dating in real life, could you imagine walking up to a guy and say, "Hey, I want to have a coffee? Want to have a wine?" Do you think that you're going to hear no?
Right.
How many times are you going to hear no? Or are you going to walk up to a guy, DTF? Are you going to hear no? Okay. So this is the first time that women are dealing with like rates of rejection. Come on, online dating. You're like, oh, I think this guy's nice. We read through their profile, like go through, look at all the little photo montage they assembled. And then at the end, they're like, they don't even swipe you. That's the first time we're facing rejection. If we went up to you on the street, you wouldn't say, oh, no, I'm going to go with her. That's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, it is having like the screen and like the separation. It's so fascinating. So I wanted to come back to the thing about Bumble. So for anyone listening, maybe you're on Bumble, maybe you've used it, maybe you haven't. But if you're unfamiliar, the way this app works is the woman has to initiate. And the idea behind it is so it's not just like this predatory thing on women or where women are getting like bombarded with messages and like they actually get to choose. And it creates consent from like moment one, which I think is smart and cool. What I don't love about it, though, is the energetic of setting the tone that like the woman has to initiate. And I wonder if in any of your research and experience, because across apps, because I've only tried the two, is there, I guess I'm asking if my hypothesis holds water. Does it switch? And I've asked a couple of people, right? Like, does it switch? It might depend on the person. It might be subjective. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, does it set the tone that, like, the woman is always going to have to call the shots?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I've only been the traditional online dating site user. I marriage came for me before all these, like, app-based things happened. But I think when I first learned of Bumble, I thought it was really, really cool that it was a female empowerment mechanism, right? And I guess I still see it as, okay, the reason you exist is because women were getting unwarranted pics, right? They were being solicited at levels that were not ideal. I would get 3-letter texts in messages. They don't write out full sentences. They don't care to try to impress. And you're battling so much of that hookup thing through a lot of the other apps. Mm-hmm. So I always thought that the way that Bumble was and others like it was different and better was that it's not necessarily going to dictate the entire relationship, although it can if that's the driver of the personality of the woman, but at least she'd have the ability to cipher out unwanted pics, unwanted communication, like all types of scenarios. Like you get approached with all types of scenarios. And I think, although I've never tried it, I think I would have liked my experience to be less of the all type of scenario, approach me kind of thing versus, let me just see what you're about. Don't send me any pics or rendezvous or proposals. Don't do any of that. I think of it more just as that entry level of the dating life cycle. I at least that's from my understanding of it.
Yeah.
No experience with it.
I mean, thank you for indulging the question. I was just curious. So what I couldn't believe in one person's profile, I actually read the sentence, "no vag pics." I was like, That's like when a stop sign pops up in an intersection where there didn't used to be one, and you're like, wow, there must have been several car accidents here. Like,
right.
This person must have had enough bad experiences that he felt the need to write in his profile.
Yes.
No veg pics. I was like, who? What's happening here?
How many are you getting per day?
Right, like, what vibe are you putting out, dog? That people, like, that's what's happening. I would never in my life, like, and, you know, I feel like I'm being a little judgmental. Like, maybe that's a strategy. Maybe that works for some people. Maybe people feel comfortable, like, sending a picture of their vagina to someone they don't know. I don't know. That's not how I would initiate a message, is all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, men do it. I mean,
oh my God.
I used to come across profiles that were like, no crazy bitches. That's what he wrote.
It's the Wild West out there.
You know?
Like someone is going to be like, oh, well, I'm a crazy bitch, so let me swipe no on that guy. That's a weird self-selection indicator.
Right.
Well, you know, I think it's also a shame, too, how so many people are so jaded. Like, how many men are actually worried about, like, women being crazy, to lack a better word for it. And when really it's just that so many people have so much emotional trauma that they haven't resolved, and so many issues that they just, like, haven't looked at, that, you know, we all don't. This person I'm seeing, the communication piece that I was so excited about, we're just, like, able to go, oh, man, like, that thing you said really bothered me because it reminded me of this. So sorry I put that on you. You know what I mean? Like, because we know and we have the awareness. And, like, really trying not to drag the past into the present. But, like, with this stuff that's just, like, triggering you, hitting your self-esteem buttons, like you mentioned earlier, it's just an interesting evolutionary time for dating and relationships, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. But, you know, you got to remember, too, like, where are people synthesizing emotion, right? I mean, they're not synthesizing emotion. Elizabeth, they're putting up their positive highlight reels.
Yeah.
Right? They're not synthesizing what they felt throughout the day. Their dissatisfaction with what happens with online dating, in real life dating. You know, my friends give me a rundown of what it's like to be out in the real world, and everybody's like on a device. Yeah. On a dating app. And the person that's on their app is next to them. So I don't think we're synthesizing, and we're not synthesizing emotion, number one. We're not really developing skills that are related to face-to-face interaction.
Yes.
You know, everybody dismisses you, ghosting, benching, breadcrumbing. I mean, look, none of these things are brand new, right? Like, none of these things, you know, you're getting blown off. That's what's happening. But you're lacking the awareness to see that you're being blown off. You think it's still in play.
Yeah.
So
I also noticed someone I was talking to, this was really funny. I had a friend recommend this dating book to me, and I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, some of this seems like legit advice. And I was like checking it with some girlfriends who have more dating experience than I do. And again, I really almost blew it with this person I really liked, because I was just taking all this outside advice, which is, anyone listening is probably like a little shocked that I would be susceptible to that, because, like, I talk about trust all the time. But it was this one area, you know, like, sometimes we're like, well, I'm new at this, or I don't have a lot of experience. Like, let me check in maybe a little more with other people than I would with myself. And I was following some bad advice for, like, not bad, but just, like, not optimal for me for, like, the first week or so of talking to this person. And then I decided to just, like, screw it and just do what I wanted to do. Like, even after our first date, I got really awkward at the end because I didn't know what to do. And, like, basically as soon as I, like, got in my house, I texted him and I was like, so I don't know why I turned into an awkward weirdo at the end of a first date. Like, I've kind of always done it, but I had a lot of fun, thanks. Because I just needed him to know. And he was like, yeah, it was pretty funny to see you be so well-spoken for several hours and then, like, turn into a teenager. And it was cool. We just had, like, a little cute conversation about it for, like, 5 minutes. And it was just, like, we just talked, because that's how I am. I'm just going to, like, put it out there. I'm not going to get in my house and beat myself up and be like, oh, why did I do that? Instead, I was just like called myself out. And then it was just like, he teased me about it for a second. It was great. And then we discussed like, yeah, definitely kiss next time. So then that was easy the next time. And it was just like, that's how I realized that, like, I just need to trust myself, roll how I roll, and not be worried about like being too much or saying too much or, oh, I shouldn't text him 3 seconds after I get into my house. But like, I had something I needed to say. And if that would have blown it, then at least I would know, right?
Yeah, no, it's always better to just deal with the relationship between the two involved.
Yeah.
Rather than seek out advice from people not involved in creating the relationship. That's just the first thing, because, relationships and love are the one thing that we have no formula for.
No.
So
but people try to make formulas. That's the problem.
Well, sure, they try to gamify it, mathematically do it, but really there's no formula. Yeah. There is none, right? So almost anyone could always tell you something, and it may have 50% validity, may not. So it's just better just to try. Like, and we talked about something earlier, like we say authentic, and in marketing it means a totally different thing. But I mean, real authenticity, like the person is going to fall for who they saw. They're going to fall for what they are watching in that date, in that interaction. That's who they're falling for. Not some like hesitant or I got to be guarded because I don't know. Like, if you're just always true to who you are and you know what your worth is, and if that person also has that same compatibility and that same like energy return, that's what you put out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I love this. I could geek out on this all day. Is there anything I didn't ask you that feels important that you want to like add into the conversation as we wrap up?
One of the things that I always argue in, and maybe you'll get mad at me over this.
Oh, I hope so. I like a little conflict sometimes.
But I do not believe in self-love. I don't believe that you would need to love yourself in order to love somebody else.
Okay, I do actually agree with you with this, right? And I've gone back and forth because there is, and I'm sure I've said it before. It's one of those things that you look back and you're like, oh, I've changed my mind about that. The concept that you must love yourself before you can love somebody else. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I agree. I don't believe in that anymore, but can you tell us why?
Well, I think when we look at women for a second, and then we'll add men to this next. So I think historically, women, we deprioritize ourselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, we center ourselves last. We don't practice self-care often enough, or our focus is the betterment of something or someone else, right? So even when we think about the idea of self-love, women already don't possess it just by the things that we historically do, right? So I honestly think that you approach love better the more you're self-aware. Okay? Because when you're more self-aware, that's one of the keys to our decision-making process, right? And it helps you understand your relationship to you, that other person, and all of your past failed relationships and what this person represents to you. And, I know that sounds ironic because the most interesting part of self-awareness is it's most challenged when you're in a relationship, because then you're mirroring back some of that past, some of that unresolved hurt, some of the triggers that maybe made you fearful of things that you had hidden and locked away.
Yeah.
So I think the more self-awareness you have, that's a better indicator of finding love and your ideal partner.
Well, because I also think when it comes to self-love, nobody loves themselves 24/7.
Right.
You might have days where you are feeling it and you are proud of yourself and you feel worthy and whatever, and then, you know, something happens, something triggers you and like kind of sends you into not a great place, or, you know, whatever's going on. Like maybe you're down on yourself for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or months or years even, whatever. So yeah, I really get that. And I think there's probably is some layer of love, right? Like a part of you that knows that you are valuable and worthy and lovable and all of that, like that inner wisdom. But that's not, when that's not what life is reflecting to you, it's more challenging to like really cue it up and be in that zone all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I always say is that love isn't just an emotion, it's an ability. Mm-hmm. You know? And
a practice, right? So it's not just like there's constant practice. There's like the communication, the presence, the listening, the sometimes doing stuff that you don't want to do. That isn't sacrifice. It's just like...
Right.
So much nuance. So much nuance. So can I ask you some totally inane, unrelated questions?
Yes.
I love to ask people, do you watch TV?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm not going to ask you that question. Are you reading anything right now?
I'm currently not.
What do you do? Well, you must have so much time. What else do you do?
Oh no, I have a full-time private practice right now. Your happiness hypothesis is the method that I'm using in practice.
Cool.
Yeah, so I offer 3 services right now, and I have structured a 3-part system within the way that I deliver the service now. So yeah, my practice is keeping me busy.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, but anything, and where do you live?
I split between New York and the Gulf.
You felt like a New Yorker to me.
Yeah, really. Yeah, born and raised there.
What part?
I grew up in the Bronx.
Oh, I grew up in Staten Island.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm on the West Coast. East Coast people are like fresh air in my face.
I love it. I know.
So we have everything, your website. Tell us your website, but it's in the show notes as well already.
Okay, it's ClarissaSilva.com.
ClarissaSilva.com.
Yeah. And there you'll find some of the programs. I also have a product that I have on pre-order. It's Your Happiness Hypothesis, How to Spot Red Flags. So I'm hoping to have that available pretty soon.
Cool.
But in the meantime, I do have practice in the service areas. One is on bad partner behavior. The other one is on how to finding the right one. And the last one is breakup recovery.
Yeah, that's I love that conversation. As I was going through my healing last year, I did several episodes on, being in the breakup space and how to really take care of yourself and like continue to move forward and not just get stuck and stay there and stuff. So I know people here are interested in those types of things. So yes, Clarissa, thank you so much. This was super fun. We'll put all the links to all the things in the show notes on the show notes page. And it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a true pleasure. Honored. Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, you too.